S.W.A.T. Police Tactical Unit. Within the world of special forces, a unique place is held by police tactical units. A specialized unit within a police force, they more often resemble tactically equipped soldiers rather than a normal street police officer. These units are trained to handle situations beyond the capabilities of standard police departments. Using military-grade weaponry and equipment, these tactical units are able to tackle counterterrorism operations, hostage situations, search and arrest warrants, and other dangerous situations that are threatening public order. Over the past few decades, many of these distinctive units have become world-renowned fighting forces. These include the French GIGN, the German GSG-9, Israeli Yamam, the Russian Spetsnaz, the Brazilian BOPE, and the Mexican GOPES. However, the very first of these tactical units was founded in the United States in the 1960s. Named S.W.A.T, it's now synonymous across the globe, so much so that it's often used as a universal term for these specialized police units. In the aftermath of World War II, life in the United States began to change. The streets of America's cities saw some of the most prominent changes, most notably a dramatic increase in violence as well as crimes carried out by organized criminal gangs. The decades of the 1960s was marked by antisocial behavior, criminal activity, frequent riots, and even mass shootings. These new threats were beyond the ability of most American police officers who were armed and trained to maintain order in relatively peaceful communities. It was quickly realized that police units that were specially trained to handle these dangerous and volatile situations were desperately needed after events such as the 1966 shooting in Austin, Texas by Charles Whitman, an ex-Marine who fired down on the general public from an observation platform on top of the University of Texas's main tower, killing and wounding many people before being shot dead by police himself. There were also the mass riots in California to contend with. John Nelson, an officer of the Los Angeles Police Department, was the first to think of such an idea. He initially proposed the formation of a special police unit to a senior police inspector, Darrell Gates, in 1964. The concept was soon authorized and put into action with the introduction of a special police unit of 15 four-man teams. Officers were armed with military weapons that were not typically issued to police officers. The rationale behind this was based on the proposed scenario of officers confronting heavily armed criminals who would otherwise have far superior firepower. The unit was named S.W.A.T, an acronym for Special Weapons Assault Team. On the recommendation of his superior, Deputy Police Chief Ed Davis, Inspector Gates changed the official designation to Special Weapons and Tactics. Officers from all over the LAPD volunteered for the service. Inspector Gates chose applicants with prior military service and specialized experience with weaponry and tactics. The role was regarded as having a special status and came with numerous additional benefits. S.W.A.T officers, however, were required to attend intensive monthly training to maintain a quality of service. Their first significant engagement came in 1969 with a major confrontation with members of the Black Panther Party. In a densely populated area of Los Angeles, 40 SWAT officers stormed the party's headquarters. The Panthers barricaded themselves inside and responded with gunfire, which led to a shootout that lasted for over 4 hours. The SWAT officers were armed with semi-automatic rifles and even requested permission to use a grenade launcher. When the shootout was over and the Panthers had surrendered, 4 Panthers and 4 officers had been injured. LAPD officials realized that the job would never have been accomplished without the SWAT officers. In 1971, teams were assigned full-time to the Los Angeles Police Department's Metropolitan Division, an elite unit within the LAPD. The Special Weapons and Tactics Unit was also given the new designation of D Platoon. 5 years after the Black Panther shootout, LAPD SWAT were involved in another similar incident which involved a group of radical left-wing militants who called themselves the Symbionese Liberation Army. A small number of these militants had fortified a house in the Compton area of Los Angeles, and a standoff between them and several SWAT units commenced. The assault on the house killed 6 of the militants, and eventually the house itself caught fire, killing the remaining fighters left inside. There were no SWAT injuries or fatalities throughout the incident, once again proving the effectiveness of the elite unit. The shootout also led to the subsequent decision to arm SWAT units with fully automatic weapons to enable them to return heavy fire. The Symbionese Liberation Army shootout brought even further reformations to the unit, with the presentation of official rules of engagement for SWAT in the incidents report. It was decided that the units were to concentrate on 4 main threats: riots, sniper attacks, political assassination attempts, and urban guerrilla warfare. As cited in the report, quote, "The purpose of SWAT is to provide protection, support, security, firepower, and rescue to police operations in high personal risk situations where specialized tactics are necessary to minimize casualties." End quote. In the decades following the formation of SWAT, the organization, tactics, and mission have consistently evolved. For example, the war on drugs was the primary focus of SWAT operations in the 1980s and 1990s, and continues right up to the present day. During the years following the 9/11 attacks, SWAT teams have also become involved in counterterrorism. The success of the LAPD's SWAT units was a clear demonstration of its importance in modern policing. From the 1970s onwards, many other police departments across the country adopted their own special operation units. This also included the FBI and military police. Uniforms. The original SWAT uniforms were typically a distinctive black or blue color with inscriptions of SWAT or police or sheriff on the back and front. The headgear consisted of either surplus World War II-era steel helmets or fiberglass motorcycle helmets that provided very limited protection. As time passed, Kevlar-based PAS-GT ballistic helmets were introduced, which offered far more protection, as well as being lighter and more compact. More recently, most SWAT units have abandoned the traditional black or blue police uniform colors and switched to standard battle dress uniforms with camouflage patterns, more akin to military fatigues. For the purpose of police tactical operations, some military uniforms are modified by removing cargo pockets on the trousers and upper and lower blouse pockets and adding them on the sleeves. On top of the uniform, SWAT officers also wear ballistic tactical vests. While fairly bulky, they offer all the protection required for missions in hostile environments. Weapons. The first SWAT teams generally used M1 carbines, mass-produced in World War II and therefore readily available. A landmark weapon of the units, however, was the Heckler & Koch MP5 submachine gun. This delayed blowback roller-locked system weapon was extremely reliable and suitable for clearing of cramped interiors. Even so, the weapon had one major flaw. It had a considerably low stopping power, only firing 9mm rounds. Thus, it began to fall out of favor and was instead replaced with the 5.56mm round carbines, namely the Colt CAR-15 and the M4. Shotguns have also been a stable weapon of the U.S. police forces since the very earliest days of law enforcement. SWAT teams have made equal frequent use of them for their heavyweight firepower. Many units carried Remington 870 shotguns. However, from the late 1980s, these were largely replaced with the more modern Italian-made semi-automatic Benelli M1 shotguns. These weapons were almost always used in tandem with assault rifles due to the limited range of the shotgun. SWAT sniper teams usually use the American-made Remington 700P, the police version of the bolt-action center-fire rifle. Each SWAT team member also has a pistol holstered to their side. These are usually semi-automatic pistols, for example the Colt M1911 pistol series, Beretta 92 pistols, Sig Sauer P226 and P229, and the FN57. Due to the special conditions of the mission, SWAT teams also make frequent use of non-lethal weapons. Depending on the scenario, they have access to tasers, tear gas, pepper spray canisters, pepper ball guns, shotguns loaded with beanbag rounds, stinger grenades, and flashbang stun grenades. Formation. The size and formation of a SWAT team often varies depending on the police department. However, there are typically two distinct elements: a sniper and observation team providing overwatch, along with an entry team for entering and clearing hostile areas. The number of men in each SWAT team is also generally divided into three types: 4-man, 6-man, and 8-man. In reality, these numbers are not static and often adapt to the differing factors of a mission. The basic structure of a SWAT 4-man team consists of the team leader, who coordinates the movement of the team, a scout, who leads the team from the point and provides cover at the forward position, a A coverman, who provides covering fire for an assigned teammate, covers danger areas as they appear and can act as an assaulter and perform other duties as directed by the team leader. Rear security, an alternate scout responsible for providing security and protection to the rear of the formation. An 8-man team differs from a 4-man team by having an assistant leader and 4 covermen. The sniper team usually has 2 members who focus on overwatch, providing observation, intelligence, and fire support, quite often situated on rooftop positions. Recruitment and training. While the recruitment procedure varies slightly from one police department to another, the unit is based on serving officers volunteering to join, as long as they meet the rigorous requirements. Maintaining a perfect level of physical fitness is a standard requirement for all SWAT officers, so physical training is essential. Various exercises, including long-distance runs in full tactical gear as well as obstacle courses, are always on the agenda. Marksmanship is naturally an equally important skill. All SWAT officers are required to be able to handle all weapons in the arsenal, regardless of their specialty. In addition, they're required to be a master marksman. To achieve this, the officers regularly spend many hours practicing firing in realistic scenarios, identifying hostile and non-hostile targets, and firing into barricaded rooms. Individual training, team exercises, or simulations of combat situations are also given great attention. Further specialized training includes sniper courses, explosives handling, surveillance techniques, and hostage negotiation methods. Officers are expected to become trained negotiators. Weaponry and equipment play a vital role in the effectiveness of these SWAT units. However, it's often stressed that a well-functioning unit only comes together when strong team unity is established. As the saying goes, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link.
The Robin Hood policeman of Guernsey who stole from the Nazis to feed the needy. From Hanni Schaft, the girl with the red hair, to Oskar Schindler, who saved 1,200 Jewish citizens from a horrifying fate in concentration camps, World War II is speckled with stories of individual heroes who made a difference and defied Nazi rule. But not all names pass into history. Many heroes remain forgotten, and 18 of those were Guernsey policemen nicknamed the Robin Hood Group. During the war, the closest the Nazis got to invading the United Kingdom was the occupation of the Channel Islands. In mid-June 1940, the British had decided the islands were of no strategic importance during the war and completely demilitarized them, leaving them wide open for Nazi occupation. On the 28th of June, the Germans launched an attack, bombing the harbors of the 2 principal islands before invading and taking control of Guernsey on the 30th of June 1940. Jersey surrendered the next day. As the year plodded on, the Germans began to realize the quick victory they had hoped for would not come to fruition. So instead, they prepared for a long war and a potential long stay on the islands, which needed fortifying. Thousands of workers were brought in from overseas, and the German officers took to the streets, pulling residents out of their houses whenever they saw fit and claiming the properties as their own. The workers, a mix of European, Algerian, and Indo-Chinese nationalities, were little better than slave labor, working on measly rations that weren't sufficient to sustain full-grown, hard-working men. Meanwhile, back on the mainland, the BBC had come up with a new way to undermine the Germans and boost morale across Europe. Douglas Ritchie, an assistant to a BBC news editor, wrote a document entitled Broadcasting as a New Weapon of War, where he put forward ways broadcasting could be used as propaganda and a way to undermine the Germans through bringing Europeans together in solidarity against them. His most famous plan was the use of the V for Victory signs. Each week, the V for Victory sign was a key part of the broadcast, encouraging listeners to find any way they could to display a V. This could be from graffiti to tapping, clapping, or hand gestures. Any creative way someone could display a V through sight or sound was encouraged, with the goal being to unnerve the Germans with this almost silent united protest. Although the broadcasts were more intended as instructions to mainland Europe, Guernsey residents took up the mantle with glee and pride. Among them were 5 policemen who eagerly took part in the campaign. They were Charles Friend, Frank Tuck, Kingston George Bailey, Jack Harper, and Archibald Tardif. The latter wrote memoirs of their time in Nazi-occupied Guernsey and their role in subverting their occupation. Bailey wrote of a night in July 1941 where the 5 of them spent a whole night plastering V signs all over the island in places where they would be most seen by the Germans. These small acts of resistance were immensely courageous, given the dangers of defying German rule, but they did nothing to put food in starving bellies. By winter 1941, the people of Guernsey were starving, and more resorted to stealing. There were thousands of laborers and citizens without enough food, while the Germans stockpiled supplies. But what was less known was that some of the thieves were the Guernsey police force themselves, selflessly risking their lives to break into German stores and return food to Guernsey citizens. As policemen, they were allowed to be out after the 11 p.m. curfew. It all started with Bailey and Tuck, who soon brought a number of other policemen into the group. As Bailey wrote in his memoir, by February 1942, the covert operation was getting out of hand. Practically the whole police force was now taking part. Under the cloak of darkness, they crept into 5 German stores, while Guernsey women and men lived off of sweet corn and potato pies. Before their very eyes lay succulent sausages, 50 pounds of meat and lard, 10 pounds of dripping vintage pork, and boxes upon boxes of tins with creamy butter and fresh tomatoes. It did not take long for them to dash back down the quiet streets to their homes, hiding the goods in chimneys or burying them deep in their back gardens. Other nights, they snipped the telephone wires used by the Nazi command and filled to the brim the petrol tanks of German cars with sand. On March 5, 1942, however, Bailey and Tuck were arrested and questioned at the German police headquarters before the entire force was arrested shortly after. By the afternoon, half had been released, and half, 18 men, remained in prison. Whilst detained, the 18 policemen were interrogated, beaten, and basically tortured by the secret field police, or Geheime Feldpolizei, the Guernsey Island equivalent of the Gestapo, in an attempt to get them to confess. Charles' friend wrote that as well as the beatings, they suffered psychological trauma and blackmail, with the Germans threatening, "If I did not plead guilty and give them a full admission to these various charges, they would fetch my mother and those nearest and dearest to me and torture them as well. It was in these circumstances that I made a full confession." Archibald Tardif's memoirs confirm this, claiming they were shown signed statements by other men and were eventually told they would be shot if they did not sign themselves. The policemen also admitted to stealing from the people of Guernsey, but this was likely a lie to save their own skins, as if they admitted to only stealing from the Germans, they would have received the death penalty. In April 1942, the 18 police officers stood up in both the German military court and the Guernsey royal court. Historians have dismissed the hearings as a kangaroo court in the worst dictatorship, with the deputy chief of police at the time, Albert Peter Lamy, writing that they had little choice but to accept the fate of the officers. The men were also convinced to accept their punishment because they were told their convictions would not stand after the war. Of the 18 men, 16 were sentenced from 8 months to 4.5 years of hard labor and deported to prisons, labor, and concentration camps across Europe, including the original 5 who participated in the V-Sign campaigns. They suffered horribly, and one, Herbert Smith, even died from his treatment overseas. Kingston Bailey was sent to one of the worst concentration camps, Dachau, while 4 were sent to the horrific Neu-Offingen labor camp. The memoirs of the surviving policemen told of the horrors they faced. Frank Tuck wrote that he had been beaten with a pick handle and flogged with the butt of a rifle, and that Smith had been left to die in a Gestapo prison. They were only liberated when victory came for the Allies in 1945. Upon returning home, the Guernsey policemen suffered long-lasting psychological and physical effects. Charles' friend weighed just 7 stone and was completely unable to use his legs by the time the Americans broke through, and he later wrote that even 20 years later, his health was still affected. Tragically, when they returned home, their promised criminal pardons from the Guernsey authorities never materialized. It meant that none of them could claim pensions or return to their previous jobs in the police force, partially due to a skewed perspective on the trials in Guernsey, with the narrative being upheld that the courts had continued to operate without Nazi influence, something that was clearly untrue. 10 years later, in 1955, still suffering injuries, psychological trauma, and with completely unjustified criminal records, 8 of the Guernsey police officers appealed their convictions. They were unsuccessful. Though later, some did receive some compensation for their suffering, it was not enough to wipe away the stain of how they were treated. All the policemen died with criminal records that, after another attempt of expunging in 2018, can now never be overturned. Instead, their families live with the unfair label, rather than the true remembrance of their ancestors as heroes who defied Nazi rule. Keith Friend later gave an interview about his father's life and legacy, and it is from here that people choose to remember the Guernsey policemen today. It was Keith who first gave them the Robin Hood moniker, stating, "I see what they did as a Robin Hood type act. It's not a crime for personal gain. It was to feed hungry people, and as policemen, they were in a position to do something about it." The FBI Hostage Rescue Team. The Federal Bureau of Investigation is responsible for domestic policing and security in the United States, with roles that include enforcing federal law, protecting against foreign intelligence gathering and counterespionage, forensics, undercover operations, and other law enforcement duties. One of these additional functions includes counterterrorism, and to this end, the FBI Hostage Rescue Team was founded. In 1972, the Olympic Games in Munich, Germany were interrupted when 11 Israeli athletes were held hostage and later executed by Palestinian gunmen, shocking the international community. In order to prevent a similar incident at the 1984 Games in Los Angeles, it was clear that tighter security arrangements were needed. The HRT has numerous responsibilities, including hostage negotiations, mobile assaults and rescue activities, counterterrorism duties, including nationwide manhunts, maritime operations, which could involve the physical boarding of seagoing vessels, the removal of suspects from barricaded buildings, high-risk raids and arrests, as well as undercover and surveillance operations, sometimes providing personal protection for FBI agents working abroad. Following their motto of "Salvare Vitas," or to save lives, the HRT has been involved in over 800 incidents both at home and abroad. The Hostage Rescue Team is organized along similar lines to SEAL Team 6 or Delta Force, giving the unit the nickname Domestic Delta, and its creation relied heavily on advisors from SEAL Teams, Delta Force, and the British Special Air Service. There are roughly 150 members of the HRT, divided into 3 separate teams, identified by the colors yellow, blue, and red, which has been designated for maritime operations. Each of these teams consists of an assault group, including a sniper and observer. They are supported by air assets in the form of tactical helicopter units and a mobility team, which utilizes their ground-based vehicles. The HRT is also supported by a command element, intelligence, logistics, and communication sections. As criminal and terrorist activities do not follow a standard pattern, the HRT's exact composition is flexible, being able to change the structure of the team to suit specific missions. They can also work alongside other similar organizations, such as SWAT teams or military forces. Becoming a member of the Hostage Rescue Team is a strenuous affair. There is a 2-week initial selection period, which includes demanding physical exercises, consisting of seemingly countless push-ups, pull-ups, climbing stairs, and long runs while wearing 55-pound weighted vests and carrying a 35-pound door-breaching battering ram, all of which are done on limited sleep. The candidates are also evaluated on their marksmanship skills, the ability to work as a team, and their ability to remain calm under pressure. To add to the stress, the candidates are not given any feedback from the instructors, only learning of their performance at the end of the selection process. Over half the candidates wash out during this stage. Once selected, the remaining candidates undergo a multi-month training course, which involves close-quarter combat, scuba diving, fast roping from helicopters, and other skills necessary for participation in the HRT. Should the recruit pass this phase, they will be inducted into the HRT as a provisional member for a year. Because the training is designed to be as realistic as possible, including the ever-present danger from using live ammunition, injuries are common, and a reported 4 candidates have been killed during training. Once inducted into the HRT, the operatives continue their training on an ongoing basis, honing their skills for when they are needed. They cross-train with other similar special operations units, including the Navy SEALs, Delta Force, DevGRU, Army Rangers, as well as Border Patrol, DEA teams, and others. As with any profession, the right tool is essential for the successful completion of a given task, and the HRT is no exception. The teams make use of a wide variety of weapons, the exact loadout changing based on the circumstances. Among the most commonly used weapons in their arsenal is the ubiquitous M4 carbine, a variant of the M16 rifle, the standard issue weapon for U.S. forces since the 1960s. Chambered in 5.56 by 45mm, this versatile weapon incorporates a Picatinny rail system, allowing accessories including scopes, laser-pointed sights, illumination devices, and other equipment to be attached. It can also be configured with a wide array of barrel lengths, stocks, and other features, allowing it to be tailored for individual needs. The HRT also uses the H&K 416, a variant of the M4, manufactured by the German company Heckler & Koch, a weapon that has gained favor with special operations teams in recent years. For more close-quarter combat, the HRT utilizes multiple versions of the H&K MP5, particularly the MP5S D6 variant. This submachine gun fires a 9mm parabellum cartridge and has an integrated suppressor built into the muzzle of the firearm. Like all MP5 variants, its compact size makes it an ideal choice for operations in confined spaces, a feature that is enhanced by its retractable stock. It can also be fired in semi-automatic mode or in 3-round bursts. The HRT also uses the MP510A3, which is an MP5 variant chambered in 10mm. The hostage rescue team also makes use of shotguns, particularly the semi-auto Benelli M4 and the pump-action Remington 870, both chambered for 12-gauge shells. Both of these powerful weapons are a great asset in close-quarter combat, supplementing the MP5. They are also very versatile, capable of being loaded with specialized breacher shells, which are able to blow the lock or hinges off a door, allowing easy access into barricaded rooms. For long-range assignments, the HRT uses several precision rifles. These include the .308 caliber Remington M40A1, the Barrett M107, chambered in .50 caliber BMG, both of which are bolt-action. The hostage rescue team also has a specialized sniper rifle as disposal, manufactured by Georgia Precision. This bolt-action rifle features a detachable 5 or 10 round box magazine of .308 cartridges, with different scopes available for long-range accuracy. Some of the sidearms include the 9mm Glock 19 and 26, the .40 caliber Glock 23, and the venerable Colt 45 1911, manufactured under contract by Springfield Armories. The Tactical Mobility Team, which supports the HRT, transports the teams in a wide variety of vehicles. These include modified pickups with assault ladders to reach access points above ground level, as well as a fleet of SUVs which are manufactured by American automaker Chevrolet. They also have access to military surplus HMMWV, or Humvees. For something more substantial, the Tactical Mobility Team uses 8x8 Bison light infantry vehicles. When the need arises, there is also an air mobile element available to the HRT. The tactical helicopter unit uses the UH-60 Blackhawk and variants of the Bell 412 and 407 models. These vehicles allow the HRT to deploy quickly and access roofs or other hard-to-reach locations, allowing a greater degree of tactical flexibility. In its years of service, the hostage rescue team has been deployed in over 800 operations. Some of the more notable ones include helping put down the Talladega prison riot in 1991. After 121 inmates took control of the federal prison and held several guards hostage, the HRT was deployed to the site, blasting holes in the exterior walls and subduing the inmates. There were no casualties on either side. As recently as 2022, the HRT was called upon to end the Colleyville Synagogue hostage crisis. The HRT breached the building, then tossed a series of stun grenades into the room where the gunmen and the hostages were being held. The hostage taker was shot and killed, and the civilians were able to escape without any loss of life. They have also been deployed twice to Libya, assisting Delta Force in the capture of Abu Anas el-Libi in 2013, and in 2014 with the capture of Ahmed Abu Katawa, who had been the architect of the 2012 Benghazi attack. Among the many other exploits, in 1998, an HRT sniper prevented a man from killing his girlfriend and son during a hostage situation. In 1992, they were pivotal in ending another prison riot in Alabama. The HRT is not without controversy, though. In 1993, they were deployed with a number of other law enforcement agencies at the Waco siege, where cult leader David Koresh and over 100 Branch Davidians and their families ensconced themselves in their sprawling compound. After a 51-day siege, the building was stormed. During the incident, the compound caught fire, which spread rapidly throughout the buildings. In the confusion that followed, 76 of the Davidians were killed, including a number of children and non-combatants. 4 ATF agents were also killed in the conflict. Today, less than 300 FBI agents have been inducted into the hostage rescue teams. In spite of this small number, their dedication and skill have proven to be invaluable in upholding their motto, to save lives. Shield tactics. Over the past few centuries, weapons technology has progressed by leaps and bounds, and recently developed equipment that is only a few years old runs the risk of becoming obsolete. In this modern age of nearly constant innovation, the shield, a piece of technology with its origins in the distant past, has been given a new purpose even in the 21st century. Shields have been vital to warfare since prehistory, where early warriors protected themselves against attacks from their enemies using shields, which were initially made from organic materials such as wood and leather. After the development of metallurgy, they incorporated metals, including bronze and later iron. As more structured societies developed, warfare became more organized, and shields remain the most powerful defensive weapon in a warrior's kit. While they are an effective tool in protecting a single warrior, it was soon discovered that their protective and offensive qualities can be magnified if used in a collective formation, with soldiers offering mutual support to each other. Among the first to utilize this principle were the ancient Greeks, who organized their soldiers into a densely packed mass of men called a phalanx. Though its exact structure changed over the centuries, they all featured ranks of men with their hoplons, or circular shields, overlapping their neighbors, presenting the enemy with an unbroken and seemingly impenetrable wall of bronze. Formations relying on shields developed further under the Roman Republic and later Empire. After transitioning from part-time warriors to a professional force of full-time soldiers, the Romans devised a series of formations for its legionaries to utilize, many of which were centered around the use of the scutum, a rectangular convex shield with dimensions of between 37 to 42 inches tall and 24 to 33 inches wide. After the fall of the Roman Empire, a wide variety of shields continued to be used for centuries by armies around the world, used in mass formations as well as for self-defense. They would eventually fall out of favor as changes in technology, such as improved armor and the introduction of firearms, would render them obsolete. In the 20th century, however, shields were revitalized, not on the battlefield, but in the equally chaotic and dangerous world of law enforcement. As a response to civil unrest in the latter half of the 20th century, police agencies developed specialized tactics and equipment with the purpose of suppressing and controlling riots. The centerpiece of the newly created gear was the Riot Shield. Though there are a wide array of these shield types, they are usually made from clear plastic, giving the officers unobstructed vision while still remaining safe behind the protective barrier of the shield, though other variants made of metal and ballistic materials are also available. While trying to disperse or contain riots or other civil unrest events, there are a myriad of tactics Riot Shield-equipped police can utilize. Many of these tactics bear a striking parallel to their more ancient counterparts. The most basic shield tactic used by modern riot police is a shield wall. Historically, this formation was the standard formation utilized by armies whose infantry were equipped with shields. The combatants would stand shoulder to shoulder, their shields overlapping, presenting an unbroken wall to the enemy. In the modern day, as in the past, this has a profound psychological effect. Seeing a solid wall of uniformed police, many rioters will simply see the futility of their position and disperse, completing the main goal of law enforcement. This is facilitated by officers leaving gaps in their formation, allowing those who wish to leave the route to do so. Those who stand and fight will face a steadfast mass of steadily advancing officers, armed with batons and other less than lethal devices, and be quickly apprehended. As time progressed, riot suppression techniques became more sophisticated, and riot police had a wide array of formations available to them, many inspired by, or at the least, bearing a striking resemblance to their ancient counterparts. In ancient Rome, as well as in many other historic militaries, units would be arrayed in blocks, with a front line, reserves, and command and control sections. This allowed tactical flexibility, enabling them to respond quickly to rapid changes in a chaotic situation. In modern policing, riot police will array themselves in similar ways, with a front block facing the crowd, command and control behind them, and another block behind that, providing security to the rear, or being used as reserves should more manpower be necessary. The rear ranks can also become the front ranks should the police be surrounded or the rioters shift their position. In addition to simple lines and blocks, law enforcement in the modern day has a diverse selection of specific formations and tactics both to protect the officers as well as restore order in a chaotic situation. The most iconic of these was the Roman testudo, meaning tortoise in Latin. It involves the interlocking of shields in the front rank, while those behind raise their shields overhead, creating a roof. This formation was utilized against enemy missile attacks from slingshot stones, arrows, and javelins. While it is unlikely that modern police will face these same weapons, those sent to maintain order in the face of civil unrest will be assaulted by a number of projectiles, including bricks, rocks, Molotov cocktails, or whatever else rioters have on hand. One of the most common types of riot shields is large, convex, and rectangular, which bears a striking resemblance to the Roman scutum. Modern police have adopted a testudo-like formation, where the front ranks interlock large shields while those behind lift their shields above their heads, protecting themselves from incoming debris. Though not effective against firearms, as most riot shields are not ballistic, they do offer a high level of defense against most thrown objects riot control officers may be subjected to. Another tactic is a wedge formation. This maneuver concentrates the impact of an attacking force on a single point, breaking the defender's cohesion. The breach is then expanded by the rest of the formation. The Romans made extensive use of this tactic, most famously at the Battle of Watling Street, where Roman wedges drove deep into Queen Boudicca's Britons, breaking through their lines and causing confusion in their army, which was eventually crushed by the legionaries. In modern-day policing, a wedge formation has a similar function, enabling smaller numbers of officers to engage larger numbers of rioters. Such a formation can break an unruly crowd into a more manageable size. Ideally, the main aim of riot police is crowd dispersal, and once isolated from the rest of the mass, the rioters will lose their willingness to carry on and leave. Those that continue to resist can easily be dealt with. The wedge formation can also be modified to form a diamond shape, allowing the officers to penetrate a group of rioters to arrest specific individuals, pulling them into the formation while still being protected in all directions. Police can also use a circular formation for this very same purpose. While the main focus of riot suppression is on crowd dispersal, in some instances, apprehending those participating in the unrest becomes a priority. To this end, law enforcement have developed a technique known as kettling. This is when the police surround the angry hostile mob. Like the tea kettle it is named after, gaps are left, controlled by the police, allowing those who wish to leave the option of doing so, like steam leaving a tea kettle. Those who remain, or those identified as ringleaders, can then be arrested. To accomplish this, barriers such as metal or concrete barricades can be set up to funnel rioters to an advantageous position for arrest. The advancing officers can then move against the crowd in lines, or in echelon, or diagonal line. This is an offensive formation, which can push the crowd into the designated area for arrest or away from areas needing protection. Advancing in echelon has a long history and has been used by outnumbered forces to gain the advantage over their opponents. It was pioneered by the Theban general Epaminondas, who used the tactic to win a stunning victory at the Battle of Leuctra in 371 BC. Most famously, it was used by Alexander the Great at the Battle of Gaugamela. There, Macedonian phalanxes, though outnumbered by a wide margin, defeated their Persian counterparts, driving them from the field at what is considered Alexander's greatest triumph. While the technology may change, what was once considered outdated has been given new purpose in the modern age. As long as riot police still use shields, formations of the ancient and medieval world will still find a use well into the 21st century.